There is a prison that has no iron bars, no guards, no locks, no chains. You cannot find it on any map, and yet billions of people are locked inside it right now as you watch this. Some of them are talented, some of them are brilliant. Some of them have a dream so vivid, so alive inside their chest that they can almost taste what life could be. And still, they stay. They stay exactly where they are. Because the most powerful prison ever built wasn't made of concrete or steel. It was made of two sentences. What if I fail? I'm not good enough. Welcome to FactNest, and today we're going to break those walls down. His name was Elias. He was 29 years old, living in a small apartment that smelled like old coffee and unfinished dreams. Every morning, he woke up to the same ceiling, the same silence, the same weight sitting on his chest like a stone he'd carried so long he'd forgotten it wasn't part of him. Elias had a gift, a rare one. He could paint, and not just paint. He could take a blank canvas and fill it with something that made strangers stop, slow down, and feel things they didn't have words for. His old art teacher once told him, "Elias, you don't just paint pictures, you paint feelings." But Elias hadn't touched a canvas in 3 years. Instead, he spent his days in a gray office, filling spreadsheets for a company that made parts for machines he didn't understand. He ate lunch alone. He drove home in silence, and every night he passed by the stack of blank canvases in the corner of his room, still in the plastic wrap, still waiting, and he said to himself the same thing: maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow had been arriving for 3 years. You might be wondering, why? Why didn't he just paint? Why didn't he just try? And the answer is one of the most fascinating, most heartbreaking truths about the human mind. Deep inside your brain, behind every thought you've ever had, behind every fear you've ever felt, sits a tiny almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala is ancient. It's been inside the human brain for hundreds of thousands of years, long before civilization, long before art, long before language. Its only job, its single obsessive purpose, is to keep you alive. And it does this by treating the unknown as a threat. When Elias looked at those blank canvases and thought about showing his work to the world, his amygdala didn't see possibility, it saw danger. It fired warning signals through his nervous system, the same way it would if he were standing at the edge of a cliff. His palms would sweat, his heart would quicken, his mind would race with catastrophic thoughts. What if they laugh at me? What if it's not good enough? What if I try my hardest and it still fails? This is what neuroscientists call the negativity bias, the brain's deeply wired tendency to amplify threats and minimize rewards. It kept our ancestors alive on the savannah. It kept them from walking into lions' territory. It kept them safe. But it was never designed for the modern world. It was never designed to handle, what if my painting isn't good enough? It was never designed to evaluate creative risk, career change, or the leap of faith that living a full life requires. And here is perhaps the most haunting discovery of all. Studies in behavioral neuroscience have shown that the human brain would rather stay in a painful, familiar situation than risk the unknown, even when that unknown could bring joy, freedom, or fulfillment. Scientists call it the miserable known versus the unknown joy. Your brain will choose a life you hate if it knows it, over a life you'd love because it doesn't know it yet. That is Elias's prison. Not the office, not the gray walls, not the manager who doesn't see him. The prison is inside his own skull, and the warden is his amygdala. I want you to pause for a moment. Think about something you've been wanting to do, not for weeks, but for years. A conversation you haven't had, a dream you keep folding and putting in a drawer. A version of yourself you keep promising to become someday when the time is right, when things settle down, when you feel ready. I want you to feel the weight of that.
because Elias felt it every single day. He felt it in the silence at dinner. He felt it when his phone rang and it was someone living the life he'd once imagined for himself. He felt it in his chest like a low, dull ache, not dramatic enough to force a change, but constant enough to make joy feel just slightly out of reach. That ache has a name. Psychologists call it the pain of unlived life. And it accumulates. Every day you don't take the step, the gap between who you are and who you know you could be grows a little wider. The walls inside your mind grow a little thicker, and the voice that says you can't, you shouldn't, you're not ready, it grows a little louder. Elias had been listening to that voice for so long, he had started to believe it was his own. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. Elias was eating lunch in the office break room, the same sandwich, the same table, the same plastic chair, when his colleague Marcus walked in. Marcus was 54. He'd worked at the same company for 26 years. He sat down across from Elias with a coffee that had gone cold, stared at the wall for a long moment, and then said something that Elias would never forget. He said, "I always wanted to open a restaurant. I was going to do it at 30, then 40. Now I just hope my kids do something they actually love." He paused, then quietly, "Don't be me, kid. Don't wait until the waiting becomes the story." Elias drove home in complete silence. He walked past the canvas in the corner of his room this time. Something was different. This time the fear was still there. He could feel it, the familiar tightening in his chest, the whispers of, "What if you fail?" But beside it now, there was something new, something louder. The terror of becoming Marcus. The terror of sitting in a break room at 54, watching his life in the rear-view mirror, wondering what would have happened if he had just tried. And in that moment, Elias understood something that all truly free people eventually understand. The pain of staying had finally become greater than the fear of moving. He tore the plastic off the canvas. I won't tell you that Elias became famous overnight. I won't tell you he quit his job the next morning and everything magically fell into place, because that's not what freedom looks like. What freedom looked like for Elias was this. It was painting until 2 a.m. and waking up for work exhausted, but alive. It was posting his first piece online and feeling the terror crawl up his spine and pressing share anyway. It was the rejection, the silence, the 3 comments that said, "This is beautiful," from strangers he'd never meet, and how those 3 comments felt like oxygen. It was the slow, unsteady, imperfect process of becoming. 6 months later, a small gallery in his city displayed 2 of his pieces. He stood in the corner of the room and watched strangers stop in front of his work, really stop and feel something. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, he still went to his gray office on Mondays, but he was free, because he had done the one thing his fear had always told him was impossible. He had chosen himself. And here is the final, most important truth this story leaves us. People who break free from the prison of fear don't become fearless. Fear doesn't disappear. The amygdala doesn't retire. But they learn something the imprisoned never do. That courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is taking one step forward while fear is still screaming. So here we are. You've been watching a story about Elias, but I think you've been watching a story about yourself. Because somewhere inside you, there is a canvas still in plastic wrap, a conversation unsent, a version of you keep promising to become, someday when the time is right, when things settle down, when you feel ready. And I need to tell you something important. The time will never be right. The fear will never fully go away, and you will never feel ready. Ready is a lie your amygdala tells you to keep you inside the familiar walls. The only moment you'll ever have is this one, right now, today. So I want to ask you, genuinely, seriously, to sit with this question. Which wall are you building today, and are you ready to tear it down? Not the walls outside you, the ones inside, the ones made of "what if I fail?" and "I'm not good enough," and "maybe someday." Those walls. Because here is the final, most important truth this story leaves us. A life lived in fear is a life half lived, and the saddest prison is the one you build yourself, one excuse at a time. You are not Elias before the canvas. You are Elias standing in front of it. The choice is yours. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to go deeper, subscribe to FactNest, where every week we bring you the science of the human mind wrapped in stories that matter. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and tear down a wall.